listening to the Christ Our Cornerstone podcast, a ministry of Christ Our Cornerstone Church in O'Neill, Nebraska. I'm Pastor Logan Merrick, and it's our prayer that this message strengthens your faith and draws you closer to Christ. Let's dive in. Well, good morning. Good to see you guys. Before we get going, make sure to grab 4 or 5 of these. They're right by the door before you leave. I know you guys like to skip out of here before you shake my hand where I can remind you, but I'm reminding you now to grab 4 or 5 of these to hand to someone, whether they're your neighbors, whether it's somebody that you buy coffee for this week, and bless in some way, which I'll be putting those out this week as well with our emails, our devotionals. So make sure you're checking your emails. I'll also have them on the social media. So if you don't remember last week leading up to Easter, we did blessing someone at Green Valley. We called it RAC, which means Random Acts of Kindness. And so we're going to be doing Random Acts of Kindness leading up to Easter. And you should have at least one of these that you're giving out each time. So with that being said, today is Palm Sunday. And did I hear Carla correctly that not necessarily the exact date, but this would be how many years for you guys? 3 years in this building. That's something to applaud, by the way, because I don't know if you guys realize, but church plants, that's what you guys are. Church plants don't last past 5 years typically. 90% of them die, and does not look like our church will be dying in 5 years. Hopefully not. But so that's something to celebrate, whether you realize it or not, and especially to have a building that doesn't cost much of except just upkeep. And so all of these things are blessings that we should be thanking the Lord for, because it's a big deal. So we've been walking through the book of Mark, and because it's Palm Sunday, we're going to look at the triumphal entry, which would be where we get Palm Sunday from, through the book of Mark. Now, I want to remind you guys what Mark is about and his theme. Remember, he's writing to Romans, the Roman church. And so his entire audience is more geared towards kingship. So his entire thing is about kings and showing that Jesus is the King of Kings. So it's very fitting that that's what we sang this morning. But what I want to look at, because last year at this time, I preached on what Palm Sunday meant. And this year I want us to look at, because we're in the book of Mark, I want us to look at the contrast of Jesus and his kingship. And so in and of himself, he holds a tension that we too should be holding this tension. And so I want to look at that. So the title of my sermon is Jesus, King of Contrast, Lion and Lamb in Passion Week. And we're going to look at each day of the Passion Week that we are about to walk through. Now, real quick, Palm Sunday technically is not on a Sunday. It would have been on a Monday. Because if you do the math, it doesn't add up if we do it on a Sunday for him to be crucified on a Friday. Then we get lost on what happens on Wednesday. Does that make sense? So Palm Sunday technically is Palm Monday. And that's where we're going to look at in just a minute. But I want us to look at the tension of what Revelation talks about in calling Jesus. What do we, I just said it for my sermon. We know him as the lion, right? And the lamb. And I want us to look at those things, because those two things, right now, it says that when the new world comes and and peace has come and Christ is reigning, it says that the lion and the lamb will lay down together, right? Right now they lay down together, but it doesn't necessarily look the same, does it? Right? We see two different things. So when you think of a lion, I'm just going to ask you this before we get started rolling. When you think of a lion, how would you describe a lion? As far as its personality, the way that it looks, how would you describe it? Fierce? What was it? Did they say vicious? Ferocious. That's a good word. Aggressive? Okay. Micah back there holding it. Dangerous. That's a good word, actually. Very good word for it. Type A. Yeah. Weston. Powerful. That's a good one. So yeah, because I was thinking strength, right? What do you call a group of lions? A pride, right? They're proud animals, right? Now let's contrast that with a lamb. What do you think of with a lamb? Meek. What else? Helpless. Yep. Which we're called sheep, right? What else? Stupid. They definitely can be that. What else? What's that? Cuddly? Yeah. I tried to cuddle a sheep before he got sheared. It wasn't as cuddly as I thought he would be, but or she. I don't know if it was a he or a she, but yeah. Followers, okay? So we see just completely different dynamics, right? And yet the scriptures call him the lion and the lamb. So that's what I want to talk about today in regards to Passion Week. So my big idea that we're going to drive home this morning is true identity in Christ means embracing our role as both meek servants and righteous followers. It encourages us to embody his character and proclaim his kingdom. So if you've got your Bibles, turn to Mark chapter 11. If you do not have a Bible, we have some back there. Those are yours to keep. If you do not have one, that's our gift to you. This is your first time here. My name is Logan, and I get the great opportunity to shepherd this local congregation, and I'm glad that you're here. So here we go. Throughout history, we've seen famous kings, right? And kings are typically known by usually one defining quality, something that marked them and something that made their name endure. Now, right now, my wife is really into earlier kingships and queenships and how different, what's the word I'm looking for? Monarchs and stuff, how one came over the other, how they married together, the houses. Yeah. So if you want an in-depth, what I would call an autistic way of focused study, get with her right now, because somehow in every conversation she brings it in. But yes, I'm clapping for you too. I love you. I'm appreciative of it. But one thing that, as we've talked about it, they have different things and that they're marked for. Kings and queens, they're named different things. And so I thought about one as I was getting this sermon ready, and that's Richard the Lionheart. How do you think Richard the Lionheart got his name? Everybody knows who Richard the Lionheart is. There's movies made about him, right? Robin Hood, he's in Robin Hood. He's in a lot of different stories. He's in Kingdom of Heaven, the movie Kingdom of Heaven. So Richard the Lionheart, why was he called that? Everybody looks at Tracy because they're like, tell us, Tracy. What's that? Yeah, he was definitely in charge. He was one of the few kings who led in battle from the front. He didn't stay in the back. He led from the front. And so his name tells you everything you're supposed to know. Strength, ferocity, power in battle, a king who led from the front, like I said, and took what was his. There's another famous king that we all know in this room. His name is David, right? David, the king of Israel, he was also known as the warrior poet. A man who could stand before a giant and sling in his hand, but also sit with a harp and pour out songs of worship to God. Even there, you start to see glimpses of something deeper, strength, tenderness existing in the same person. But if we're honest, even the best kings in history tend to lean in one direction. They are either known for their strength or remembered for their compassion. Rarely are both in perfection together. And that's where Jesus stands completely alone, because when you come to Scripture, especially when you begin to see him in light of what we're going to look at later, you're confronted with something that doesn't fit in any category we're used to. He is the lion and he is the lamb, as I've said. Not sometimes one or not sometimes the other. He's not shifting depending on the moment. He is fully both at the same exact time, always. Jonathan Edwards said this about him, about Christ. He said, an admirable conjunction of diverse excellencies. I would highly recommend, just write this down if you're taking notes. You can download this free. But Jonathan Edwards has a sermon called The Excellencies of Christ, where it became a book that he wrote off of this sermon. And that's where I got a lot of what I'm using today, because it's really, really good. And there's one guy who actually, because Jonathan Edwards can be hard to read. There's one guy that has a free download that you can read it that's more modernized, but he keeps the theological themes the same. And what Jonathan Edwards is saying is this, that in him, things that seem opposite to us are actually perfectly united. Infinite majesty and perfect meekness, absolute authority and complete submission, righteous judgment and also deep mercy. And that's what we're going to see throughout Mark 11. Because this passage forces us to wrestle with the kind of kingship that feels unconventional. Jesus enters Jerusalem like a servant and then walks into the temple like a sovereign. He receives praise with humility and then exercises authority with intensity. He is gentle and yet he is unyielding. And here's why this matters for us this morning, because we don't just observe his kingship, we live under it. And if the king holds these things together, our lives are meant to reflect the same tension, not choosing between boldness or humility, not drifting between softness and harshness, but learning by his grace to walk in both. Let me ask you this. How many of you guys have been under good leaders that have been able to harness both tenderness and authority? Have you been able to? Robin, are you saying I'm the person? I'm just kidding. But I can think of really good leaders that I have been under that tend to either go really sharply tender, compassionate, and they get run over, or they tend to rule with an iron fist, and they're great leaders, but they are bad people. You know what I mean? They're not great with people, but they're great at executing missions. And so it's hard to see or even comprehend someone who has both of these things, and that's Jesus, and that's why we're supposed to find our identity in that. So, because of the king that we follow is not one-dimensional, he is the lion and he is the lamb, we now should look at, and we're going to take this in chunks because it's such a long chapter. I'm going to do it. We're going to look at verses 1 through 10 first. And so if you're taking notes, my first note is the not so triumphant entry. And you're going to see why right now. Now, when they drew near to Jerusalem, to Bethphage and Bethany at the Mount of Olives, Jesus sent two of his disciples and said to them, go into the village in front of you, and immediately as you enter, you will find a colt tied, on which no one has ever sat. Untie it and bring it. If anyone says to you, why are you doing these things? Say, the Lord has need of it, and will send it back here immediately. And they went away and found a colt tied at the door outside the street, and they untied it. And some of those standing there said to them, what are you doing, untying the colt? And they told them what Jesus had said, and they let them go. And they brought the colt to Jesus, and they threw their cloaks on it, and he sat on it. And many spread their cloaks on the road, and others spread leafy branches, and they had cut from the fields. And those who went before and those who followed were shouting, Hosanna! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Blessed is the coming kingdom of our father David. Hosanna in the highest. I want to pause for just a second. Well, let me finish out verse 11. And he entered Jerusalem and went into the temple. And when he had looked around at everything, and it was already late, he went out to Bethany with the 12. I want to pause for just a second. Let's go back to verse 10. So we just had the kids wave palm branches, right? And the song was Hosanna, Hosanna, right? And I remember the song back in the 90s, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Hosanna, Hosanna, Hosanna. You guys remember that song? Right? We never did the part of verse 10 that they said, "Blessed is the coming kingdom of our father David." What does that tell you? What does it tell you? What's that? Okay. But what are they thinking just in their praise? Yeah. Who said that? Great job. Yes. They thought he would be a political ruler, right? A king. And so that's why I'm calling this the not so triumphant entry with my first point. So when we come to this moment in Mark 11, we often call it the triumphal entry, which is probably at the top of your subchapter title. But if we're honest, there's something in that title that doesn't quite fit, because when you look at how kings were actually crowned throughout history, this doesn't look like a coronation at all. I want us to think about the kings like Richard the Lionheart. Coronations were massive events. You could even go and look at on television. You can see when the King of England is coronated, when the new king is coronated. You can see these things. There are war horses, symbols of power and conquest. There are going to be dignitaries, important people gathered to witness it. There will be regalia, crowns, robes, displays of wealth. There was fanfare, announcements, celebrations, declarations of authority. Everything about it is intentional, official, and unmistakable. Is that what we're seeing here? Did you see those things? Did you see war horses? Did you see Jesus riding in on a war horse? No. You see him riding in on a donkey. Did you see dignitaries present? Were there other kings or other political leaders besides? We're not going to talk about the Pharisees. We know why they're there. We don't see them. Is there regalia? Is Jesus wearing a robe, a royal robe? Are the disciples going before him with these big banners? Nope. Is there fanfare? Yes, but not with gigantic announcements. And so it's not a true coronation. It's not a true triumphal entry. Jesus enters Jerusalem not on a war horse, but on a donkey, like I said. There's no crown, there's no throne, and there's no formal ceremony. And the crowd, while loud, is not truly understanding what they're participating in. This is not Jesus' earthly coronation, and it's definitely not his heavenly coronation. It's something entirely different. Because despite its outward appearance, this is not a true coronation. It is a false coronation of the true king. Hear what I just said. It is a false coronation of a true king. What do I mean by that? It's not Jesus becoming the earthly or heavenly king just yet. He is the true king. But they are trying to crown him in a way that is not meant for what he came for. So everything about this is off. It's humble when it should be majestic. It's unexpected when it should be carefully orchestrated. It's spontaneous when it should be official, and ultimately it proves to be superficial. Because real coronations don't unravel in a matter of days. Real coronations don't end with the king being rejected, beaten, and executed within a matter of days. And yet that's exactly where this is heading. The same voices shouting Hosanna here in verse 9 and 10 will soon be shouting, crucify him, before the week is over. Why? Why? Why the sudden turn? Yeah, Weston. Right. They wanted an earthly king. So what happens? Why are all of a sudden they going to turn on him days later? Because he doesn't do the thing they're wanting him to do. Yeah. This isn't in my notes, Gennaro, so I apologize. I told my wife about these videos that I came across of Orthodox Jewish priests. And, they're in their synagogues and they are teaching just like normal, like we do, but they're live streaming them. So that's how I came across them. And it angered me, and it also hurt me because they refuse to call Jesus. They talk about Jesus a lot, by the way. They hate Christians. They say we deserve to die. and that we will die when the true Messiah comes. But they'll call him JC because they will not call him Jesus Christ. And one of them said that they were talking to a Christian just that week, and he said he looked at the Christian and he said, "Don't you believe that Jesus died for your sins?" And the Christian said, "Yes." And the priest said, "You're welcome." He goes, "What do you mean? You're welcome. You think your king died for you? We did that for you." And then another one said something that I find totally ironic. But he said, Jesus was really who he's claimed to be. He would have saved himself. He would have gotten down from the cross. But he couldn't because he was weak. That was his words. These are words. We read what the Pharisees say in the scriptures. You don't realize that they still believe that today. And so when I read about Jesus in this Passion Week and dying and seeing these men who say, by the way, that if you meet a Christian, do not befriend them, spit upon them. And so when I see Jesus saying, while on the cross, being spat upon, "Father, forgive them." So when I rise up in just so much anger, the Lord goes, "What are you getting upset about? Your sin is just as nasty. Pray for them." And so when I read the words, "Crucify him," and having seen that, it's still the same way today. It would not change. Nothing would change about it unless the Holy Spirit wipes the scales from their eyes. And so this not so triumphal entry, this not a real coronation, is not genuine faith. It's misplaced expectation. They wanted a king who would overthrow Rome. They wanted political freedom. They wanted immediate relief from oppression. But when Jesus made it clear, both in what he did and what he didn't do, he was showing what kind of king he is at this moment. And so they turned on him. You can write this down if you're taking notes. Because a king who doesn't meet your expectations is easy to reject when you never truly understood him to begin with. And this moment marks the beginning of Passion Week. As I said, Passion Week starts on Monday, not today, as we typically, traditionally have it. And that matters because, like I said, everything has to line up just as it does in the Old Testament and just as it does in the New Testament. And so in Passover, the lamb was selected on the 10th day of the first month and then sacrificed on the 14th day. And here's Jesus entering Jerusalem at the beginning of that same timeline. I told you guys last year, if you don't remember, it is meant that Jesus comes in at this time, because just as they are bringing in the Passover lambs, the lambs that will be crucified, so is the true Passover lamb coming into Jerusalem. Not as a political king, but as a true Passover lamb. He is stepping into place and he is presenting himself not to take a throne, but to go to a cross. And this is where we begin to see the beauty of who he is, because even here, in what looks like a coronation, he's already moving towards sacrifice. He is the king, yes, but he is also the lamb. Write this down. The crowd sees a king they want, but God is revealing the king they need. Read that again. And the tension is already building because the king, this king, will not be shaped by their expectations, and he will not be shaped by my or your expectations either, but he has come to fulfill the mission, his Father's mission. And he even leads him straight to death. Point number 2, the not so fruitful tree. So let's go ahead and read from verses 12 through 14. On the following day, when they came to Bethany, he was hungry. And seeing in the distance a fig tree in leaf, he went to see if he could find anything on it. And when he came to it, he found nothing but leaves, for it was not the season for figs. And he said to it, may no one ever eat fruit from you again. And his disciples heard it. So we move on to the next day. So he's come in on a Monday, and now it's a Tuesday, and he sees this tree. He's probably been up for a while, because what do we know of Jesus? But he gets up early before anyone else, and he spends time with the Father. So more than likely, he's been up for some time now, and he's hungry. And so he sees this tree, a fig tree. And Jesus is walking along, and Mark tells us something simple but important. He's hungry. Why do we need to know that he's hungry? Why does that matter? It shows that he's fully human. And he's walking, he sees this fig tree in the distance. It has leaves on it, full, green, promising. And so it's naturally, he goes on to expect to find something to eat. But at first glance, this can feel confusing, because Mark tells us something, that it wasn't the season for figs. So why would Jesus be upset? Because here's what you got to know. Even though it's not full season for figs yet, by the time they have leaves on them, they should still have these little nodules, whatever you want to call them, that are early. They're unripe figs, but they can still be eaten. They weren't the final product, but they were edible, and travelers oftentimes would eat them on long journeys. So when Jesus sees this tree covered in leaves, it's giving every indication that fruit should be there. It looks right. It appears healthy. It promises something. But when he gets closer, what does he see? What does he see? No fruit. It's completely barren. And in response, Jesus curses the tree. And this moment shocks us a little, because this feels out of character for Jesus. He gets angry. All of a sudden, is he getting hangry? Does he need a Snickers bar, Pastor Logan? No. By the way, you should write this down. I don't have it up here, but this is the only destructive miracle recorded in any of the Gospels. Jesus heals, he restores, and he provides, but here he also can destroy. And if we're not careful, we might read this and think, if Jesus is frustrated, is he just reacting out of hunger? But nope. His anger is intentional. What do you think he's upset about? Is he just responding to a tree? No. We're going to see in just a minute. This is symbolic of what he's about to endure. He's unraveling something much deeper, because this tree is a picture. It had leaves, but no fruit. It had appearance, but no substance. And it made a promise it could not fulfill. And Jesus knows exactly what is coming next. He knows he's about to walk into a temple system that looks alive, it looks active, it looks religious, but is completely barren. There's no true worship, no real prayer, and no genuine fruit. And so what he does to the tree becomes a living illustration of what he's about to confront in the temple. It's not misplaced anger. This is righteous anger and prophetic action. And you can almost hear the echo of what he's already taught. Jesus says earlier in the Gospels, he says, you will know them by their fruit. The disciples know this, and so more than likely, they see him curse this tree, and they're going to go back. They're going to say, why did you do this? But more than likely, this is kind of ringing true of something he's already said. And so when it comes to Israel, when it comes to the system of worship centered in the temple, write this down, there were leaves everywhere. There were rituals. There were sacrifices. There was activity. There was appearance. But underneath it all, it was fruitless, rotten at the core. Brothers and sisters, I'm going to ask you this. How many churches in America and around the world are rotten? They look really good from the outside. They have all the things. They've got a great worship team and lights and smoke, and it blasts your face, and they've got good donuts, not the day-old donuts. They go get those bad boys fresh. They got pretty decent coffee, not scoutier, as my wife calls it, scooters. But they got some decent coffee. They've got a pastor who smiles real nice. Doesn't got chipped teeth in the front. My son just noticed that I have a chipped tooth that I've had since I was 12. And he just looked at me the other day and he goes, you have a chipped tooth. They've got pastors with great teeth, right? Lots of people go to them, but they are dead. Here's what I want to ask you. We need to really search our hearts here at Christ Our Cornerstone Church and make sure that we aren't a dead church, that we're just got some nice leaves, but we just practice these rituals. It's not real faith. We're not really living it out. We're not really making a difference in our community and the communities that surround. So, what Jesus did was not random. It was a warning, because just like that tree, judgment is coming. In fact, this moment points forward to something even bigger, the coming destruction of the temple itself. What looks strong, what looks established, what looks permanent will not stand if it is empty before God. And this presses into us because it's possible to look spiritually alive and still be barren, to have leaves, the language, the rhythm, the routine, but no real fruit. And Jesus is not drawn in by appearance. He looks at what is real. What does Samuel say about David? When his father Jesse goes, are you sure you want that ruddy looking dude? What does he say? God looks at the heart, right? Man looks at the outside of the appearance. Because our King looks at what is real. Because the one who is both lion and the lamb doesn't just receive empty pretense, he confronts it, and this is the work of the lion. So the lamb has come in, and now the lion has begun to take over. Remember, this isn't Bruce Banner. Is it Bruce Banner? Hulk, right? He's not like one way, and then all of a sudden he turns into, he's always living within the tension. So now let's go to verses 15 through 19. If you're taking notes, it's the not so holy temple. And they came to Jerusalem, and he entered the temple and began to drive out those who sold and those who bought in the temple. And he overturned the tables of the money changers and the seats of those who sold pigeons. And he would not allow anyone to carry anything through the temple. And he was teaching them and saying to them, is it not written that my house shall be called a house of prayer for all the nations? I want you to highlight that or underline that in your Bible, because that matters. But you have made it a den of robbers. And the chief priests and the scribes heard it and were seeking a way to destroy him, for they feared him because of the crowd was astonished at his teaching. And when evening came, they went out of the city. So I want you to imagine with me for a moment. I want you to think about this. Have you ever seen the pictures or the videos of the New York Stock Exchange? Does it feel like a place you want to hold worship? Why? It's chaos. There's people yelling, there's bells ringing, there's all types of things happening. That's what's happening in this moment. That is literally what's taking place in the temple. There's yelling, there's chaos, there's all this stuff. It's loud, it's intense. And so while we can find that this picture of the New York Stock Exchange, it's a powerful example of capitalism. It's a good thing. We all here, I'm sure, have our retirements tied up in the stock market. I'm not saying anything against the stock market, but the stock market, ultimately, if we really just got down to it, it's not just about retirement. It ultimately represents one thing. What do you think that thing is? It starts with a big G, and I don't mean gangster. Greed. At the end of the day, there's a lot of greed. Is capitalism a great system? Absolutely. Is it also a flawed system? Yes, because sinful people are in it. So now I want you to take that image and I want you to move it into the temple. Here's God's house. Because what Jesus walks into, the Jewish historian Josephus, he says this about Passover, okay? This is just during his time, which he was during the time of Jesus and then a little after. But he says Jerusalem would swell with pilgrims. Thousands upon thousands of people flooded into the city, bringing animals and buying sacrifices, preparing for worship. Josephus goes on to give a record that one Passover season, they had over 255,000 lambs were bought, sold, and sacrificed in one Passover. Would you guys imagine if everybody came into O'Neill needing to buy some cows and some bulls, and you guys were selling 255,000 in one day? That's a lot. Am I wrong? Feels like a lot. So just imagine it for a moment. Many of you have been in livestock auctions. Can somebody explain to me what a livestock auction is like? Is it clean? I'm looking at you. You guys just had one, so that's why I'm looking at y'all. Is it clean? Okay, well, I've only ever been to one in my life, and it was the dirtiest place I've ever been. So they can be dirty, they can be loud, right? It's a lot of animals, right? So now you've got pigeons, you've got lambs, you've got all these sorts of different things. You've got bulls, you've got oxen. Now I want you to try to imagine worshiping in the middle of the Stagmeyer's bull auction. Hey, could you keep it down, Miles, with the microphone, dude? I'm trying to talk to Jesus, right? The noise, the chaos, the distractions, it's all happening out in the marketplace, and it's happening in the temple courts. And here's what makes it even more significant. This is taking place in the court of Gentiles. The only place in the temple where non-Jews were allowed to come and seek God is right here in the midst of an auction. So if a Gentile wanted to worship, if they wanted to pray, if they wanted to draw near, this chaos is what they encountered. Not reverence, not prayer, not worship, but noise, exploitation, and corruption. Because on top of that, they weren't just being taken advantage of. This was a system that was run under the authority of the high priest Caiaphas and his father-in-law. And this was built off the profit of worshipers. John MacArthur said this is literally the first ever franchise model. They took this into other temples where they would charge exorbitant amount up and over to Gentiles what these animals were worth for sacrifice. And the money went to them. So they had inflated prices, unfair exchanges, people being used in the name of God. And Jesus walks into this. He doesn't just go, it's all right, normal every day. What does he do? Does he do what probably most of us would do, walking into something chaotic that we're kind of used to this system? And though it bothers us, we just kind of go with it because it's the system? No, we just read it. What's he do? He flips tables. It says he literally pulls a chair out from a dude who's trying to sell some pigeons. Like, that is hilarious. He's like, nope, see ya, right? In Matthew, it tells us he starts making a whip. Ka-yow! He turns into Indiana Jones. So he declares, my house shall be called a house of prayer for all nations and not a den of thieves. So I don't want you to miss what's happening here. Because in that day, many believed that when the Messiah came, he would cleanse the temple. Hear me. The Jews believe he will cleanse the temple. So here Jesus is, he's cleansing the temple. But what do you think they think the Messiah is going to cleanse the temple of? Gentiles. That's not what Jesus does. He actually does the opposite. He drives out the corruption. He drives out the greed. He drives out the false system that is keeping the nations from God. And he says this place was meant for them too. For all nations, for all people, for anyone who would come and seek the Lord. This is the Lion on full display. Righteous anger, holy authority, a king who sees injustice and refuses to let it stand. This is not a king who looks the other way while the powerful exploit the weak. This is a king who confronts it, who tears it down, and who exposes what is false. Because he will not allow empty, fruitless religion to stand in the way of real worship. And I don't want you to miss the heart behind it. This anger is not detached. It is burning with compassion because the very people he has shown grace and mercy and forgiveness to are now the ones mistreating the others and keeping them from God. What does God tell the Israelites in the very beginning when they start this covenant? Bless those who bless you, curse those who don't. But I'm about to get, they even have another word. He's not going to stand for it. This is a king who will break the back of fruitless religious systems, a king who demands holiness in the worship of his people. The Lion and the Lamb does not accept corrupt worship. He confronts it. And here's the tension. The Lion shows his authority here, but he will not make it his final display of power in the temple. No, the final blow will come through the Lamb. What do I mean by that? Through patience, through meekness, and through sacrifice, it is the Lamb who goes to the cross and puts an end to that very system. Write this down. It will be the Lamb who tears the veil, opening the way for all to come to the Father, no longer needing a system that feeds on others. That, brothers and sisters, that's kingship. Last point, the not so impossible faith. We've walked through the not so triumphant entry, the not so fruitful tree, and the not so holy temple. And now Jesus gives us a promise, a way forward, a way to respond to all we've seen, and it's faith. Let's read. We're going to finish this out. As they passed by in the morning, they saw the fig tree withered away to its roots. And Peter remembered and said to him, Rabbi, look, the fig tree that you cursed has withered. And Jesus answered them, have faith in God. Truly I say to you, whoever says to this mountain, be taken up and thrown into the sea, and does not doubt in his heart, but believes that what he says will come to pass, it will be done for him. Therefore I tell you, whatever you ask in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it will be yours. And whenever you stand praying, forgive if you have anything against anyone, so that if you have anything against anyone, so that your Father also, who is in heaven, may forgive you of your trespasses. Now, before we start going all like name it and claim it and blab it and grab it, all right? Jesus is not saying you can just go start telling mountains to be tossed into the sea and you're just throwing around all the geography of our country. It's not what he's talking about. You guys have heard me say this before. When we pray the will of God, so that whenever you are in complete communion with God and you understand his will, you can literally pray in faith his will because it will be done. When the disciples said, Lord, teach us to pray, he says, you should pray like this. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. So let's don't get crazy with that. But this is not just any faith that we're talking about. It's not small, it's not timid, and it's not surface level. It's faith that looks impossible to us because, let's be honest, the king wasn't what they expected, the tree wasn't what it appeared, and the temple wasn't what it claimed. Everything we've seen points to a world that's confusing, frustrating, and full of appearances that fail. And yet, faith in this king is far more powerful than we can imagine. Jesus says, have faith in God. Truly, I tell you, if anyone says to this mountain, go and throw yourself into the sea, and does not doubt, it will be done for them. That's impossible faith. A mountain does not move on its own, yet the authority of the king, our lion, makes it possible. And notice the balance. It's not just the lion's power at work here. Jesus also says, when you stand praying, forgive. The Lamb calls us to dependence, humility, and mercy. True faith is both. It's bold, it's courageous, it speaks mountains into motion, and it's tender, it trusts God, it forgives, and it submits. The king, write this down, the king we follow, the lion and the lamb, makes the impossible possible. Because he is both authority and meekness, power and dependence, judgment and mercy. And when we live in that tension, trusting him with bold faith while walking in humble dependence, we become participants in his kingdom here and now. Mountains are moved, fruit grows where barrenness once reigned. The temple of our hearts becomes a place of genuine worship. This is the kind of faith that transforms everything because it trusts the true king, the lion, and the lamb to what only he can do. I'm going to close with this. You can go ahead and come on up, Robin. Thursday, Noah and I went and saw the movie Project Hail Mary. If you guys get a chance, you should go see it. It's really good. It's probably the best movie I've seen in some time. And there's a couple of reasons why. One, it's good storytelling, good acting, all that stuff. Good stuff all around. There's no cussing, which blew my mind. There's no sexual innuendo. There's nothing like that. The only reason why it's rated PG-13 is because you see them drinking alcohol in one quick scene, and there's a lot of tension in it. So here's what it's about. The earth is on the brink of destruction, and the only hope rests on the shoulders of a terrified middle school science teacher. He doesn't want to go, so they say they've got 30 days because the sun is dying. And they've got to do something within the next 30 days, or it's going to be, or not the next 30 days, it's 30 years that they have to live. But over that time, famine will ultimately happen because as the sun dies out, right? All these things. And so they look at him and they're like, you got to go. You're the only one that understands the science. And the reason why I like the movie so much is because I think Ryan Gosling's character I identified so much with because he goes, I'll pass. And they're like, we're all going to die. And he goes, yeah, but at least I get to die 30 years later down the road. Like, I'm not an astronaut. Is anybody going to sign up for that? I mean, if you guys are probably braver than I am, but if somebody said the rest of the world depends on you, it's a one-way ticket. You're going to die in space alone to save the rest of us. I'm not signing up for it. And so they call it Project Hail Mary because that's what it is. If you don't know football, it's one last heave, right? Hope to win. It's to save everyone. And so through courage and ingenuity and sacrifice, he becomes this unlikely hero. And it's really a beautiful story of redemption. But here's the truth. Even that story pales in comparison to what Jesus did. This was never a last-minute Hail Mary plan. This has always been the mission, the only mission fit for Jesus to save mankind. When the fall happened, it didn't catch the Trinity off guard. They already knew it. This was already the plan from all eternity. And Jesus didn't do it reluctantly. He didn't stumble under fear. He carried it out with joy, with courage, and with perfect wisdom and strength. And so the Lamb rode into Jerusalem on Passion Week. The Lion's righteous authority flashed in his confrontation with the temple, and the Lamb went to the cross. The Lion rose from the dead, and when he comes again, every ounce of that kingship, meekness and might, Lion and Lamb, will be on full display. It will be his rightful coronation. So friends, here's what this means for us. We follow a king who is supremely capable, perfectly willing, and entirely trustworthy. The mountains in our lives, the barren places, the chaos around us, they are no match for him. He has authority, he has mercy, and he is coming back to set all things right. So we can live in that tension today, humble yet bold, dependent yet confident, tender yet courageous. Because the king we follow is the Lion and the Lamb. And we get to look forward with hope because his coronation is coming, and we will see it in full glory. Bow your heads with me.